Hamas is considering surrender to Israel, but still, it has conditions. To be more specific, senior figures in Hamas were quoted in the El Hadat media portal on Monday saying that the organization is ready to become a political party, and at the same time, they expressed willingness for leaders to withdraw from Gaza in exchange for safety guarantees as Israel continues to partition Gaza in order to bring Hamas to a hostage deal. And meanwhile, the IDF intelligence echelon assesses that the takeover of the Morag corridor will expedite another hostage deal, as security officials say that at this stage, the terror organizations in the Gaza Strip are avoiding confrontation with the IDF. However, despite the wide-scale ground maneuver, the IDF continues to discover terror infrastructure remaining deep inside the Gaza Strip. Hamas has apparently re-established positions inside buildings and concealed tunnel shafts beneath civilian areas. Despite these difficulties, the IDF continues to make progress, including the destruction of 1.2-kilometer-long tunnel and the elimination of many terrorists. And amidst these moves, Israel's defense minister called on Gaza's residents to use the last moment to expel Hamas and free the hostages. However, no breakthrough has been achieved at the negotiations in Cairo, Egypt, as Egyptian and Palestinian sources claim that although Hamas did show flexibility for releasing more living hostages at Israel's demand, the terror organization asked for more time. The United States is also pressing for the release of the maximum number of hostages, but Hamas continues to set conditions, with one Hamas official saying, "We are willing to release all of them, the problem is not the number." This ambiguous statement was the only explanation provided in Cairo after the latest round of talks. And meanwhile, sirens were heard in various locations in Israel during the Passover holiday weekend due to a missile fired from Yemen towards Israel and were intercepted. To the north, the picture is very unclear. There are conflicting reports about whether Lebanon will disarm Hezbollah, even as a network of the smuggling of UAVs components has been discovered in Europe. For 10 months, an undercover operation was carried out by the law enforcement agencies in the United Kingdom, France, Spain, and Germany to shut this network down, and we have all the details for you in today's report. And meanwhile, in Syria, there is a battle to see who will be the next patron of the al-Julani regime. Although Turkey was an early favorite, Saudi Arabia has arrived on the scene with an offer that might be too good to pass up. This would deal a severe blow to the Turkish President Erdogan and his plans, and it might be good news for Israel. But we'll see. And we'll also take you on the deck of an American aircraft carrier at war as the United States Central Command released footage from the deck of the Harry S. Truman as sailors prepared munitions and aircrafts for strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. And last but not least, there is a big news coming out of Iran as we might be seeing the final days of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. The visible, frail and aging dictator is facing many problems, and now there is the possibility that some of his own henchmen might be plotting to overthrow him. So we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 557 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I want to invite you to click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. We'll start with the news from the Gaza Strip. The IDF's takeover of the Morag route, bisecting the area between Khan Yunis and Rafah and stretching all the way to the Tel El Sultan neighborhood, has been completed. and at the same time the IDF continues to advance and seize additional territories inside the Gaza Strip, and at this stage it is one-sided fighting, with Hamas refraining from confronting the IDF forces openly. The main goal of the remaining Hamas forces at this point seems to be survival. However, they still have some assets left. In fact, the assessment is that most of the Hamas's tunnels in Gaza have not been affected even after more than a year and a half of fighting. The IDF also reported that in the last 24 hours, Gaza Division forces destroyed a large tunnel in the Sabora neighborhood in Rafah. The tunnel route had a depth of about 20 meters and was hundreds of meters long. The branch was used as a gathering point for Hamas terrorists and connected multiple tunnel routes in that area. In additional activity, the division's forces located a cache of Hamas weapons hidden inside a building that was previously used as a school. The forces are moving very slowly and carefully to avoid harming the hostages, but even so, there is a real risk to their lives, since the IDF and the defense establishment cannot guarantee that there are no Israeli hostages in any given place at any time. We also know from past experiences that any approach by the forces of the IDF could cause the captors, the Hamas terrorists, if indeed they are there, to execute the Israeli hostages. We've seen that happen before. And despite these difficulties, the operations continue. In the last 24 hours, fighter jets, UAVs, and attack helicopters attack about 35 targets in the Gaza Strip, and they were guided by the Intelligence Directorate, the Southern Command, and the Shin Bet. According to the IDF spokesperson, amongst the targets that were attacked was a weapons manufacturing site in the center of the Gaza Strip, an area where the IDF has never operated before, that supplies weaponry to the terrorist organizations, and a launch site containing launchers with rockets aimed at Israeli territory ready to be used. And once again, despite 18 months of intense combat operations, the intelligence assessment is that Hamas still has an enormous number of tunnels, including some that are crossing into Egypt. The tunnels connecting Rafah in Gaza to Egypt take on increasing significance, as they are the only way that Hamas can bring in fresh supplies of weapons and ammunition into the Gaza Strip. And as all of this kinetic activity continues, there are still negotiations taking place in Cairo, Egypt, between Israel and Hamas. Sources familiar with the details reported that in the last 24 hours, the Hamas delegation left the Egyptian capital without reaching a final agreement, with an understanding with the mediators that talks and negotiations will continue in the near future. Also, during the meetings, Hamas gave its initial approval to release 9 living hostages as part of the agreed-upon framework, which constitute a significant development. Other reports in the Saudi newspaper El Sharak tracked with these reports, adding that the Hamas delegation returned to Doha, Qatar, after the talks in Cairo, Egypt, amidst promises to discuss the Israeli proposal, and even provided an answer within days. They also reported that the Israeli proposal included a demand for the release of 11 hostages, not 9, in exchange for several Palestinian prisoners and under the same conditions as the previous deal. The proposal also includes a 40-day ceasefire, during which negotiations would be held on the second stage. Al Jazeera also quoted a senior Hamas official who said that a new ceasefire proposal from Egypt was received, but it stressed that no agreement can be reached with Israel unless the terror organization laid down its arms. The official quoted in the report added that our negotiating delegation was surprised that the proposal that Egypt conveyed included an explicit text regarding dismantling the resistance that is the Hamas terrorist organization and disarm it from its weapons. Egypt told us that there would be no agreement to stop the war without negotiating the issue. For now, Hamas is sticking to its principled position and strongly refuses any discussion about disarming, setting this as a clear red line. In addition, they remained adamant that any agreement must lead to the war's end. Conversely, the Americans continue applying strong pressure on Hamas to increase the number of live hostages to be released in the upcoming phase. So it is important to point out that Hamas's agreement to release 9 hostages is seen as cautious progress, though far from satisfying Israel's demands. The Saudi channel Al Arabiya reported overnight between Sunday and Monday that the mediators are pressing Israel and Hamas to sign a 2-phase deal by the end of the month of April. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on the matter, and as always, we ask you to keep spreading the truth by sharing our videos on YouTube and follow us on social media. And most importantly, to remain tuned to the truth in real time, click that subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. We switch our focus now to the northern arena, where there is some very good news in the battle against the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah. The French news portal Le Figaro published a report on Sunday saying that on April 4th, a suspect was indicted by a counter-terrorism judge in Paris and imprisoned on charges of terrorist criminal association as a result of his involvement in a network of smuggling drones to Hezbollah in Lebanon. The network, which operated in Spain, France, Germany, and Britain, was dismantled between the summer of 2024 and last week in a massive international operation conducted by several law enforcement agencies in all 4 countries. The smuggling operations were meant to move parts and components into Lebanon that would have enabled Hezbollah to manufacture thousands of drones that they could have been used to attack Israel. These drones are commercial, off-the-shelf technology that can be used to take pictures of you and your friends as you go into ball games, or they can be also used to carry out several kilograms of explosive devices that can be detonated. They have been used widely for this purpose by soldiers on both sides of the war in Ukraine, as well as other wars in the past several years, and this is the use that Hezbollah primarily had for these drones. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding this matter. But a moment before we move on to the latest developments regarding the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, let us take a moment to focus on another very important issue. Right now, because of the war, Israel is facing a hunger crisis like never before. Over 30% of the country's farmland is located in conflict zones, and because of rocket fire evacuations and damage, millions of pounds of crops have been lost. Families have been displaced, jobs have been put on hold, and entire communities are living in uncertainty, with many struggling to get a hot meal on the table. Leket Israel has made their main target rescuing food that would otherwise be thrown away and feeding those hit hardest by this war. So they're collecting surplus from farms, hotels, and suppliers and getting fresh, nourishing meals to people who need them now. These meals are delivered with care and dignity. But here's the truth: they cannot do this without your help. So the Bible says, "Blessed are those who consider the poor." This is your moment to stand with Israel, not just in words, but in action. So go to mealsforisrael.com. Again, that's mealsforisrael.com and donate now. Your gift helps feed Israelis affected by this war. Now, back to the news, and we're switching our focus to the broader region. On Monday, the French government declared that it, along with Britain and Germany, intends to remain vigilant ahead of the next round of talks between the United States and Iran to ensure that the negotiations between Washington and Tehran align with Europe's security interests. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot made those remarks at a gathering of EU foreign ministers in Luxembourg hours after it became known that the next round of nuclear talks will take place this coming Saturday in Rome, following indirect talks between United States and Iranian representatives in Oman over the weekend. This followed weeks of growing threats from Washington to attack Iranian nuclear facilities if the Islamic Republic does not come to the negotiating table and agree to a compromise that will satisfy the United States. After Saturday's discussions, Iran and the United States described the talks as positive and constructive. And elsewhere, the United States President Donald Trump told reporters over the weekend that we'll be making a decision on Iran very soon. Nothing matters until you finish it. So I don't like talking about it, but it's going okay. The Iranian issue is going quite well, I think. These developments are causing some worry in Israel that, as with Ukraine, Trump may agree to sign a deal to avoid a war that doesn't truly remove the Iranian nuclear threat. However, historically, Iran has always managed to set itself up for unnecessary problems, and there was evidence that this trend would continue this week. So on Monday, Tehran announced that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who represented his country in the talks in Oman against Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, will visit Moscow later this week for consultations on the negotiations. This tracked with other recent developments, including Iran's supply to Russia of ammunition for its war against Ukraine and cooperation on issues related to oil exports and other trade matters. There is concern in many quarters that in exchange for all of this assistance to Russia, Iran might receive technology and knowledge that will be useful to them in the pursuit for nuclear weapons. However, it is worth remembering that so far President Trump's stance is clearer and more determined than his predecessors. Political sources in Jerusalem have praised President Trump for preparing the diplomatic arena well ahead of the negotiations. This included deploying large military forces to the region and launching an unprecedented air operation to destroy the Houthis' capabilities in Yemen. He also appointed his envoy Steve Witkoff to engage with Tehran, the capital of Iran, and sent a direct message to the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, imposed new sanctions on Iranian oil exports, and hosted Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. All of this sent an unequivocal public message regarding the possibility of a military option against Iran and strengthened this position going into the negotiations. So according to these same Israeli political sources, the Iranians are not in good shape, but they have also taken their own steps. The supreme leader is adopting hardline positions, Hezbollah is trying to recover and rebuild its military strength, and the Houthis refused Washington's invitation to stop their attacks on maritime shippings after a month of American bombings. All of this is apparently being done to try and strengthen Tehran's bargaining position. And with all of this in mind, President Trump has set a 2-month timeline to reach an agreement with Iran, with the possibility of an extension if the talks start in a positive spirit. But he repeated his warning to Iran that if no agreement is reached, its nuclear facilities will be attacked and Israel will lead this attack. So here at TBN Israel, we'll keep you tuned to the truth in real time, so click that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps us reach more people around the world so that they will know what's happening and that they will know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And getting back to Iran, there are rumblings of revolution in this country, where the Ayatollah regime has ruled with an iron fist for over 40 years. Weekly street demonstrations in major cities show discontent at the ground level, while at every level of society and culture, there is open talk of support for Reza Pahlavi, the eldest son of the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who led Iran before the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And amidst this domestic unrest, the threat of American military intervention helped bring Iran back to the nuclear talks, but experts agree that Iran's failing economy will ensure that it remains there, as it has little choice but to seek relief from crippling economic sanctions. In a related development, Iran's currency has seen staggering inflation and is now one of the weakest on earth, running over 40,000 rials. for $1 United States dollar. Amidst these problems, the country's youth struggle to find employment, and the frustrated middle class can no longer afford imported goods, a significant status symbol in Iranian society. Additionally, on Monday, United States Central Command published a post in Hebrew on its X account stating, 2 years ago, United States Central Command forces and the IDF took part in an exercise, Jupiter's Oak, a bilateral military exercise designed to enhance the interoperability between the United States and the Israeli militaries. Our units are always ready to operate together because we have always trained together. The post included a picture of American and Israeli fighter jets flying alongside the strategic B-52 bomber with the caption, "All units are ready." In other words, the exercise held 2 years ago was itself a message towards Iran, during which the Air Force of the United States and Israel practiced striking distance complex targets, achieving air superiority, and engaging in air-to-air combat. So here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding Iran, and as always, we ask you to join us in prayer. Make it personal. Pray for the hostages, the Israeli hostages that are still kept in the Gaza Strip by Hamas. Pray for the soldiers in Israel, for their protection, if they are defending the country in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, or in Judea and Samaria. I would also ask you to personally pray for the families of all those soldiers that are serving most of the year in their posts, far away from their loved ones. Keep them strong and safe. And most importantly, unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.